It was 1 year ago that a Wiley couple died when their house exploded in the middle of the night. The official finding, natural gas leaked under their house and ignited. At the time the state investigation was closed, ours was just beginning.
Over the past year, News 8 has amassed hundreds of documents and spent countless hours to unearth the truth. Our finding that tens of thousands of North Texas lives may be at risk. Investigative reporter Brett Chip joins us now. He's got details for us. Brett?
John and Gloria, when Benny and Martha Cryer died in a house explosion in Wiley 1 year ago, the Texas Railroad Commission, the agency that regulates the natural gas industry in the state, took over the investigation. But were they really in search of the truth, or have they, in effect, helped bury a deadly secret that lurks beneath the North Texas dirt? Tonight, News 8 investigates.
I mean, it just blew up. Shook my whole house. You would have thought a bomb had gone off.
The neighbors who lived it will never forget. Wiley, Texas, October 16, 2006. A pre-dawn explosion levels the home of Benny and Martha Cryer. The couple was blown out of their bed, trapped under debris that was starting to catch fire.
There was screaming going on.
Next-door neighbor Sean Willie watched helplessly as they both burned to death.
And I know it wasn't my responsibility to take care of them, but it was kind of... It gets to you.
It was the worst night of my life.
The trauma of that night also haunts Willie's wife.
The people who would have helped anybody that needed anything, and we couldn't help them. And they didn't deserve it.
Investigators with the state's oil and gas regulatory agency, the Texas Railroad Commission, were on the scene within hours, quick to discover natural gas had leaked into the Cryers' home from a pipe that had pulled out of its fitting beneath the gas meter in the alley. This past March, the Railroad Commission's official findings were released. The service line had in fact separated from its compression coupling, and gas had migrated through the soil and ignited the Cryers' house a few yards away. The Railroad Commission Safety Director Mary McDaniel notified Atmos Energy of the findings, thanking them for their assistance, declaring this to be a favorable report. The only finding, possible damage to the gas line during third-party activity, meaning another utility, not Atmos, may have been responsible. The Railroad Commission's case was closed, but our investigation was just beginning into how no one or thing was being blamed for the Cryers' deaths, which is exactly why neighbors are incensed.
Nobody deserves to die like that. Nobody. And to treat it as if it's something that they can brush off is inconceivable, immoral, and unethical, and quite frankly, unacceptable.
There was nothing done to try to document the coupling.
According to pipeline engineer Don Deaver of Houston, Willie's outrage is justified. Deaver was a pipeline safety expert for Exxon for 33 years and is familiar with compression coupling failures. After reviewing the state's report at our request, Deaver says he believes no real investigation was ever done.
They didn't do any forensic work on the coupling itself.
Which would have included what?
Well, you would take it, you would have pulled it apart, you would at least open it up to see what's in it.
But photographs taken after the report was released show mud still caked on the coupling that failed, meaning it was never inspected by the state. This report was complete when that photograph was taken.
That's right.
What sense does that make?
Well, it says that they did absolutely nothing.
Not only did investigators fail to inspect the fitting, Deaver says there's no mention of the coupling's legacy of failure. The non-restraint compression coupling was installed in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s and still connects gas pipes under tens of thousands of older North Texas homes. Unlike newer fittings that lock in place, the non-restraint coupling's only method of gripping the pipe is a rubber seal holding it in place. Deaver says the fitting has a tendency to fail when the notoriously elastic North Texas soil expands, contracts, and pulls on a pipe. Like that.
Okay.
Atmos officials say there are an estimated 100,000 of the questionable couplings still under the ground. Railroad Commission officials should be well aware of their danger. On file with the state, memo after memo dating back to the early 1980s from respected institutions such as the National Transportation Safety Board and the American Gas Association, warning gas companies nationwide of the pull-out potential and the coupling's limitations. Why? Because people were being killed and injured all over the country. The coupling that leaked and killed the Cryers was installed in 1979 by Lone Star Gas, the company that used to own the current Atmos system. In 1980, the couplings manufacturer warned Lone Star officials that the couplings will not meet new federal regulations. But replacing them would be costly, tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. The potentially faulty couplings were left in the ground. When they failed, some North Texans began paying with their lives. A house explosion in Keller in 1980 left 1 dead. 3 were injured in another explosion in Arlington in 1998. 1 dead, 1 injured in a house explosion in North Richland Hills in 2000. 4 were badly burned in an explosion in West Dallas in 2001. The Cryers died when their house exploded in 2006. Then on May 29th of this year,
There was just a boom. Damage is extensive.
exactly 2 months after the Railroad Commission vindicated Atmos in the Wiley explosion report, another explosion, this time in Cleburne. Hazel Pollock and her daughter Hazel Sanderson were killed. 3 others suffered serious burns. The cause, a leaking compression coupling beneath the street on an Atmos pipe. Atmos says it spent nearly $100 million last year alone repairing damaged gas lines and on maintenance. Company officials say the couplings are safe and that a water utility is to blame for the Wiley accident. The question now, with more than 100,000 potentially deadly couplings still in the ground, why is the Railroad Commission reluctant to act?
Do those things need to come out of the ground?
At this point, I can't say that.
Getting answers from Railroad Commission officials in Austin has been difficult. Over the past year, we have been repeatedly told that Railroad Commission Chairman Michael Williams would not comment. Following a commission meeting in Austin last August, we asked for a face-to-face meeting with Williams.
Will he be available at some point?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Yeah.
Why won't he talk to us about this issue?
He's going to a meeting right now.
Safety Director Mary McDaniel also declined to talk to us and was also unavailable until we caught up with her after the same meeting. She says she stands by her report, and despite the legacy of tragedy, there's no need to assume that the couplings are not safe.
So you don't think there's imminent danger for people in North Texas through failure of these couplings?
At this point, no.
Who's minding the store? Who cares about the lives of these people? How many Texans die before somebody cares?
According to this Railroad Commission document obtained by News 8, one state employee investigating the Wiley explosion did care. In fact, last year, that employee recommended the immediate pullout of all of the faulty couplings around the state. So what happened to that recommendation? I'll have that story tomorrow night.
A deadly natural gas explosion in Wiley last year is fueling new debate over the safety of many North Texans.
At issue, an estimated 100,000 gas pipeline fittings under North Texas homes with a legacy of fatal failure.
Tonight, some new questions about why state officials are allowing the fittings to remain in the ground. Brett Shipp joins us now with more of his year-long investigation. Brett?
That's right, John and Gloria. That's 100,000 of the questionable couplings still in the ground in North Texas. The same fittings that have been popping loose under the North Texas soil, leaking natural gas into houses and causing deadly explosions for decades. So why haven't state officials demanded they be replaced? Tonight, News 8 investigates. When leaking gas was blamed for the October 2006 explosion that killed Benny and Martha Cryer, neighbors like Coral Watkins were not surprised. She says many of her neighbors had complained to the gas company for years.
We used to could walk out and it'd just hit you in the face.
And Atmos never...
Atmos would come out and say they couldn't smell anything.
As it turns out, the neighbors were right. Days after the gas leak and explosion that killed the Cryers, Atmos crews made a shocking discovery. Gas lines were leaking all over the neighborhood, 24 in all, even though Atmos officials say a sweep found no leaks just 1 year before. But after the October explosion, Atmos did find a pipe leaking in Kenneth Crowder's front yard.
They come back and told me that I had a leak, a big leak too.
Atmos officials have declined to discuss on camera with News 8 the nature of those leaks, citing ongoing litigation. They do insist that the original equipment was installed properly. But the leak that killed Benny and Martha Cryer was traced to this, a gas line that had separated from its fitting, what's known as a non-restraint compression coupling installed back in the 70s. Unlike most fittings which lock tight, this coupling's only mechanism to grip the pipe, a rubber seal that, according to one Atmos employee, has a history of slipping out.
The washer on the inside probably a tendency to dry up over a period of years and just start causing a leak.
Atmos officials say they replace the couplings after they leak and will replace them when they discover one still in the ground. But federal pipeline safety regulations already require each segment of pipeline that becomes unsafe must be replaced or removed from service. By not removing all of the old fittings, Atmos is leaving 100,000 potentially deadly couplings still in the elastic North Texas soil. The danger? This. In 1980, the National Transportation Safety Board, investigating a fatal house explosion in Keller, determined that soil stress loosened one end of the compression coupling. In that same report, the NTSB declared compression couplings were not designed to prevent pullout.
But this is a compression coupling that I bought.
Pipeline engineer Don Deaver of Houston says compression couplings are known throughout the industry as dangerous. The manufacturers even warn of a potential pullout.
And this has been known for a long time. These warnings have been here for many, many years.
On December 8th of last year, Railroad Commission investigators released their preliminary findings on the Cryers house explosion. Among their findings, a line that separated from a compression coupling, possibly due to shifting of soil and natural ground movement. And in this inter-office email, just days before the final report was released, Railroad Commission Safety Director Mary McDaniel and her investigator discussed the coupling's susceptibility to pull out with stress. But 5 days later, when the Wiley explosion final report became public, a glaring omission. No mention of the flawed couplings and no criticism of Atmos and the 24 leaks in one neighborhood. Instead, the report alluded to possible damage to the gas line during third-party activity, meaning another utility, not Atmos, may be to blame for the pullout. In a glowing notification letter to Atmos, the safety director thanked them for their assistance with what she termed a favorable report and praised their efforts to maintain their pipeline. Deaver says he's shocked by the language in the final report.
I don't understand the reason for even making that statement. It's almost suggesting that there's a lack of independence between the Texas Railroad Commission and the industry it's regulating when it gets to be so chumpy and makes such statements considering that two people were dead.
News 8 has also obtained this, an internal memo dated December 8th of last year from Regional Safety Director Jody Curl to her boss, Mary McDaniel, regarding the Wiley explosion. Based on her concerns, Curl recommends an expedited program to phase out the compression couplings attached to the gas meters. But just weeks ago, McDaniel told us she rejected Curl's recommendation. Her reason? McDaniel says there is nothing to back it up.
Nothing to back that up?
There was one incident in the Wiley that happened at that time, but we didn't have any information to show that there was a historical problem with compression type couplings.
Then perhaps she somehow missed this.
I can't comprehend how she's alive.
January 25th of this year, 1 month after Curl's recommendation to remove the couplings, a homeowner is injured when natural gas leaks into her house near Houston and explodes. Preliminary cause, settling soil, causing a compression coupling to fail.
I thought it was lightning and I heard the fire siren.
5 months later, on May 29th, 2 people are killed and 3 injured when natural gas leaks into a home in Cleburne. Preliminary cause, a compression coupling that failed. Again, the state's position,
Do those things need to come out of the ground?
At this point, I can't say that.
Last week, nearly 1 year since the Wiley explosion, the Railroad Commission issued a directive in response to the safety hazard posed by these couplings. What was that directive, and did it go far enough? I'll have that story Sunday night as our investigation continues. Gloria?
Brett, this is kind of scary. How do we know if we have one of those pipe fittings under our house?
I've heard a lot of questions like that today. The main thing, if you've got an older home, 70s or before, call Atmos and ask them if you have a non-restraint compression coupling attached to your gas meter. If you do, tell them you want it removed.
Safety of many North Texans was called into question last week during a News 8 investigation into a deadly natural gas explosion in Wiley last year. As a result, the state agency that oversees pipeline safety in Texas is under increasing scrutiny tonight for allowing 100,000 potentially deadly pipe fittings to remain in the ground. Tonight, there's new evidence that Texas Railroad commissioners suddenly backed off a proposal last spring to force Atmos to remove the dangerous couplings. News 8's Brett Schiff joins us tonight with his continuing investigation. Brett?
Brad, 1 year after a natural gas explosion killed Benny and Martha Cryer of Wiley, the Texas Railroad Commission is taking action to ensure some of the potentially deadly couplings are removed. But is that action too little, too late? Tonight, News 8 investigates.
We've seen all kinds of smoke and fire.
It was an instant cloud. People were yelling.
December 28, 2004, Ramsey, Minnesota. 3 people were killed, 1 injured, when a natural gas pipe pulled out of its coupling, leaking gas and sparking an explosion.
Explosions of this type, a lot of times are gas related.
It was the same style of coupling that federal regulators and industry experts had warned for 2 decades. It posed a deadly potential for pullout.
Like that. Like that.
The Minnesota Office of Pipeline Safety conducted an exhaustive and detailed investigation, including a forensic examination of the failed coupling, and determined the pipe pullout occurred because of thermal contraction of the soil. The response was swift. The fittings were deemed dangerous, and state pipeline officials ordered nearly 30,000 of them immediately pulled from the ground, costing the gas company there nearly $40 million.
My husband tried to keep the hose on them to keep them from burning. I mean, we didn't know what else to do.
Fast forward to October 16, 2006, Wiley, Texas. Benny and Martha Cryer are killed when an Atmos pipe pulled out of its compression coupling, leaking gas and causing an explosion. The Texas Railroad Commission, which regulates the pipeline industry, conducted the investigation. Its preliminary finding, a line that separated from a compression coupling, possibly due to shifting of soil and natural ground movement. And just as in Minnesota, a recommendation was drafted, dated April 25, 2007, from Safety Director Mary McDaniel, directing gas companies in Texas to establish a replacement program to phase out the questionable couplings. But that memo was never sent. This one was, also dated April 25th, again from Mary McDaniel, but the message was greatly modified. The demand for a coupling phase-out was gone, replaced by this, a request for information regarding the installation, maintenance, and leak history of the compression couplings. When we asked Safety Director Mary McDaniel about that original phase-out recommendation, she denies one was ever considered.
The initial recommendation was to have all the gas companies remove those pre-bent risers and compression couplings because of a history of danger and tragedy.
No, that's not what I'm aware of.
So the potentially deadly couplings, an estimated 100,000 of them, remain in the soil while the Railroad Commission conducts a survey. At a meeting in Austin just days ago, Railroad Commissioners congratulated McDaniel for her fine work.
You all are doing such a great job, Mary, getting in so deep into this study. I really appreciate it.
Then, amid mounting questions from News 8, commissioners ordered gas companies to repair or replace the dangerous couplings if They are leaking or discovered during routine excavations.
Motion carries. Let's move to
Instead of ordering the couplings removed, as in Minnesota, railroad commissioners have opted to study them and revisit the issue in January. Commission Chairman Michael Williams.
Do you think it's still possible that people could die before these compression coupling leaks are discovered?
You know, Brett, we are taking every effort we can to make sure that we can provide the people in the state the safest natural gas transporting system in the country.
This order would not have saved Benny and Martha Cryer's lives. It wouldn't have
Austin
saved
attorney
lives.
Bruce Crawford represents the Cryer family in a lawsuit against Atmos Energy. He called the Railroad Commission directive meaningless, mainly because federal safety regulations already say each segment of pipeline that becomes unsafe must be replaced or removed from service. Crawford says railroad commissioners are in effect doing nothing.
The Railroad Commission has not done anything to follow up to make sure that they take those couplings out of the ground in applications where they're not appropriate and where they're unsafe and where more people are going to die if they don't do something to fix this problem.
So why isn't Atmos aggressively removing 100,000 non-restraint couplings still in their system? That question was recently posed to an Atmos engineer in this videotaped deposition.
All right. Is there any reason other than cost for Atmos not to replace the non-restraint fittings with a safer restraint fitting?
I don't know.
Atmos Energy's official position is another utility disrupted their gas lines, causing the Wiley explosion. Atmos officials also say they are complying with the Railroad Commission's directive and insist their pipeline system is safe. Atmos officials also once assured Wiley residents who reported smelling gas that everything was fine.
In some cases, there was no leak found. In other cases, it might have been something inside the home, like a hot water heater that was leaking.
But everything in that Wiley neighborhood was not fine. A compression coupling with a deadly reputation failed, killing Benny and Martha Cryer. A style of coupling too dangerous for Minnesota, but not for the state of Texas.
In response to our reports, Atmos officials have released a statement. They say safety and reliability are their highest priorities and that they welcome any discussion about safety and maintaining their natural gas system. More importantly, if you smell gas, contact Atmos.
Brad, as you've been digging into this, so to speak, beyond the surface, lots of concern been generated. What should people do if they're concerned?
Absolutely. If you're in an older home and your gas meter looks unattended to for several years, say if it was your home's built 60 or before, call Atmos, ask them if you have those type of compression couplings. If you do, you want them out.
A top official from Atmos Energy is on the record tonight saying that all natural gas leaks are serious and possibly deadly. But Atmos Energy says the vast majority of their leaks can go months or longer without being repaired. News 8's Brett Shipp has been investigating potentially deadly fittings under thousands of North Texas homes, and tonight has new information about why many leaks are left unrepaired.
One Sunday I came out here with the dogs and it was like walking in a wall of it.
It was
really,
that bad.
It made me ill.
Cindy Graham of Richardson describes the experience of smelling leaking natural gas just outside of her home this summer. Her immediate response to call Atmos. Atmos's response:
they said they'd do something. Nothing ever happened.
Graham says Atmos did come out, found the leak somewhere nearby, but told her it would not be repaired because it was not a threat. In fact, they didn't even tell her where it was. We did.
I can smell it. It's coming out of here. Yeah, it's coming right out of here.
I smelled it yesterday and
it's coming right out of here.
We had called and called and called about gas leaks, gas smells, and bubbling everywhere, and we were told there's nothing wrong.
Coral Watkins of Wiley says she and her neighbors were also told not to worry by Atmos representatives. But then one of those leaks turned deadly when gas found its way under the home of Benny and Martha Cryer, who were killed when the gas exploded. In the days following that explosion, Atmos discovered 24 active leaks within a few blocks in the same neighborhood, leaks it may have known already existed, any one of which, according to one top Atmos official, could have turned out to be deadly.
I believe any time that you have an escape of natural gas, you have the potential of a serious situation that could cause serious damage or even death.
So what's the danger to North Texans? Atmos reported having more than 16,000 leaks in its North and Mid-Texas system last year. They say that on any given day, they have roughly 6,700 active leaks. According to Atmos, only 5% of their active leaks, the really bad ones, get repaired immediately. Those are known as grade 1 leaks. Grade 2 leaks, the medium priority, those make up about 33%. Those are monitored monthly until they get repaired. The grade 3 and 4 leaks, they make up about 62%. Those are low priority leaks, and according to Atmos, they may not be repaired for months. Cindy Graham's fear that right next door to her is one of those grade 3 or grade 4 leaks. A leak which, according to Atmos, is both potentially dangerous, yet not a threat to public safety.
I don't know what these people are thinking. I don't see how they can come to your door, look you straight in the face, and tell you it's not an issue when obviously it's an issue.
Brett Shipp, Channel 8 News.
Since our investigation began last week, Atmos officials say they have responded to hundreds of calls concerning the faulty couplings exposed in our reports. They say they found very few of the questionable couplings, but urge anyone who smells gas to please call. New questions tonight about Atmos Energy's safety commitment throughout its system. It follows our investigation into potentially dangerous couplings still in use in North Texas.
Continuing leaks aren't hard to find, as you're about to see, and some neighbors claim the company's fixes aren't really fixes at all. Brett Shipp has more as News 8 investigates.
Where were you yesterday? You had
just walking right through this alley.
Jay Markham walks this North Texas neighborhood with a natural gas detector and an acute curiosity. He's seen our reports on defective couplings and wants to know how bad the leaks really are, and it didn't take him long to find one. The detector sniffs the gas coming from a rusty gas meter. The spray-on soap reveals the leak.
You see the bubbles right here.
What does that tell you?
It tells me that piece of riser is leaking right there where it hits that valve, and we're detecting a leak visually on this Atmos Energy line at that location.
And just moments after alerting authorities, firefighters arrive with their own detection equipment and confirm Markham's discovery of a gas leak. Little shock considering all of the yellow Atmos activity flags littering this neighborhood, and considering the leak is a half-block away from where Benny and Martha Cryer died in a natural gas explosion 1 year ago. Following the explosion, Atmos discovered 24 leaks within just a few blocks in this Wiley neighborhood. Cora Watkins says Atmos continues to both repair numerous leaks and insists the area is safe.
I smelled gas the other day, called them out. They told me there was nothing out here. Then the other day we caught them back out here and they were fixing a neighbor's leak right behind my house.
They said they'd do something. Nothing ever happened.
Cindy Graham of Richardson says she feels the same way. She says she reported a neighborhood gas leak to Atmos last June. It was not until News 8 reported her story last week that Atmos crews came out and discovered a leak which Graham says she was told should have been immediately placed on a repair list. Atmos says it has responded in person to more than 1,500 concerned customers following our reports and says its gas delivery system is safe and reliable for all customers. At the same time, however, Atmos boasts to potential investors that it has the lowest utility operation and maintenance expenses per customer among its peers. Atmos spends $112 per customer. The competition spends $218 per customer. A desire to keep maintenance costs low might explain why Atmos allows an estimated 100,000 potentially deadly couplings to remain in the constantly shifting North Texas soil. Replacing them could cost tens of millions of dollars. Now, twice in the past week, News 8 has responded to a natural gas leak faster than Atmos. State Representative Jody Laubenberg, whose district includes the Wiley neighborhood where 2 people died, believes it's time for Atmos to put safety first.
We've already had, what, 8, 9 deaths already. We know ground is going to shift. We know things are going to happen. Let's not wait for more deaths.
We're live now in Wiley in front of that gas meter in question. The meter that Atmos was supposed to fix yesterday. We'll be sure Markham came out again today with his detection unit. And guess what he found? Another leak. It was still leaking. It seems that Atmos technicians had only put a fresh coat of paint on this meter, hoping that would do the trick. It did not. Markham was upset. He called police. He called the fire department. Atmos came back out, and we're told that Atmos has finally fixed this leak, and the whole neighborhood hopes that is the case.
The natural gas fittings responsible for numerous explosions and deaths in North Texas may soon be coming out of the ground. State regulators will vote tomorrow on a proposal to remove the dangerous fittings from service as soon as they can be identified and found. Tomorrow's vote comes on the heels of a News 8 investigation into the questionable couplings. Reporter Brett Shipp broke this story. He joins us now tonight with an update. Brett?
Gloria, 2.5 weeks ago, we began airing a series of stories about deadly natural gas fittings still in use under the North Texas soil. We also reported on the reluctance of state regulators, the Texas Railroad Commission, to do anything about it. But tomorrow morning in Austin, the Railroad Commission is expected to do an about-face, ordering the removal of the fittings and acting to ensure that all Texans are safe. Our year-long investigation began after Benny and Martha Cryer of Wiley were killed when their home mysteriously exploded. Our investigation intensified after the state's regulatory body, the Texas Railroad Commission, released a favorable report absolving the gas company, Atmos, of any culpability. Neighbors were outraged.
Who's minding the store? Who cares about the lives of these people?
The Railroad Commission's final report was horribly deficient, according to one engineering expert who believed no real investigation had ever been done.
Well, it determines and shows something bad happened, but it didn't do a very good job of determining why.
But documents we obtained from the Railroad Commission files showed that the Cryers died when a gas pipe connector called a non-restraint compression coupling failed, allowing gas to escape into their home. Those records also revealed something more troubling. The coupling that failed had a legacy of death and injury dating back to 1980. Still, the couplings were left in the ground despite repeated warnings throughout the industry. Officials, first with Lone Star Gas, which became TXU, and then Atmos, all declined to remove the fittings from their system, insisting they were safe. Then, on May 29th, 2 months after Atmos was cleared in the Cryers explosion, another compression coupling failed. This time, killing 2 and injuring 3 others when gas leaked into this home in Cleburne. The Railroad Commission safety director still refused to concede there was a problem.
Do those things need to come out of the ground?
At this point, I can't say that.
But now, following the News 8 investigation, Railroad Commission Chairman Michael Williams is proposing this directive that would require the removal and replacement of all non-restraint compression couplings still in the ground in Texas, not just the estimated 100,000 in the Atmos system. Williams is also proposing the coupling removal be completed within 2 years. If approved by the 3-member commission tomorrow, the defective couplings with the deadly reputation would begin coming out of the ground immediately. Atmos officials tonight say that safety has always been their highest priority and that they will comply with whatever new standards are adopted. No word yet on how much it will cost to remove the couplings, but the Railroad Commission, after nearly 3 decades, may finally have decided that the lives are worth it. Gloria and John, this is surprising because it was just 1 week ago that the executive director of the Railroad Commission put out a big statement vilifying WFAA for our series reports, calling them unnecessary, but tomorrow looks like a change of heart.
Atmos Energy officials today are working to come up with a strategy to remove an estimated 100 dangerous natural gas couplings from the ground. It's going to cost millions. The Texas Railroad Commissioners voted Tuesday to force all natural gas distributors in Texas to remove the fittings following a News 8 investigation. Our investigation exposed how compression couplings installed in the 50s, 60s, and 70s are susceptible to pull out and leaks and the deaths that resulted. Atmos says the coupling removal order could cost them up to $50 million, an amount that could be passed through to ratepayers only after the money is spent and if state regulators agree. Texas Railroad Commission is ordering natural gas distributors, including Atmos, to remove dangerous couplings from the ground following a News 8 investigation. Now, we first told you about this last night on the update. Our investigation documented case after case of explosions resulting in injury or death dating back to 1980 in which compression couplings failed. Railroad commissioners ordered gas utility companies to pull an estimated 100,000 unsafe couplings out of the ground immediately. Atmos Energy says it will fully comply with the order, saying it will cost up to $50 million. The order only affects couplings attached to gas meters.
Well, dig them up and replace them. That's the emergency order issued today by the Texas Railroad Commission following a News 8 investigation into faulty gas couplings. It's a move that will no doubt cost Atmos Energy tens of millions of dollars, but as state officials now recognize will also no doubt save lives. Brett Shipp joins us now with more on the Commission's decision. Brett?
Gloria, for nearly 3 decades, gas companies in North Texas have been warned about the deadly potential for compression couplings to fail. But for years, the Texas Railroad Commission has allowed those couplings to remain in the ground. Now, just 3 weeks after a News 8 investigation, railroad commissioners are ordering many, not all, but many of those couplings out of the ground. Our investigation documented case after case of explosions resulting in injury or death dating back to 1980 in which compression couplings failed. In October of last year, Benny and Martha Cryer of Wiley were burned to death when gas leaked out of a compression coupling into their home and exploded. Since that time, News 8 found a mountain of evidence that the gas company and the Railroad Commission either knew or should have known the compression couplings, which use only a rubber seal to hold the gas pipe in place, had a tendency to pull out. Like that.
Okay.
Earlier this year, railroad commissioners ordered that the couplings be inventoried and studied. But then
there was just a boom. Damage is extensive.
Just a few weeks later, 2 more people died when gas leaked from a faulty coupling in Cleburne, causing another house explosion and killing 2 more people. Now, just days after a News 8 investigation brought the issue to light.
All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Nay.
Railroad commissioners voted 2-1 to order an estimated 100,000 unsafe couplings pulled out of the ground immediately. The couplings affected are the ones attached to gas meters, typically those installed in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Railroad Commission Chairman Michael Williams says it was his decision to have the couplings removed and hinted that it had nothing to do with the News 8 investigation.
Over the course of time, you have to go back and look at the system. You have to go back and look at your regulatory and safety regime. You've got to make improvements to it, and that's what we did today.
Atmos Energy says it will fully comply with the state directive and estimates it will cost between $35 and $50 million to remove the couplings. Today's order did not address untold thousands of compression couplings that are not attached to gas meters, such as the kind that failed and killed 2 people in Cleburne. That was a different kind of compression coupling. Chairman Williams says the Railroad Commission will continue to study those couplings.
Tonight, we continue our News 8 investigation into the potentially dangerous and life-threatening faulty gas fittings under tens of thousands of North Texas homes.
News 8 has learned that the fitting being blamed in this deadly house explosion in Cleburne was identified decades ago as being dangerous.
It's a type of fitting that is still under the ground all over North Texas. Today in court, Atmos attorneys said they had no way of knowing this particular fitting is unsafe. Channel 8's Brett Shipp joins us now with an update on his ongoing investigation. Brett?
John, News 8 has learned that the fitting that apparently failed in the deadly house explosion in Cleburne last May was called a Normac coupling. Records obtained by News 8 show that the gas company has known for decades that that specific fitting is prone to fail, yet tens of thousands of them remain in the ground. Why? Tonight, News 8 investigates. May 29th of last year, natural gas leaks into a house in Cleburne, Texas. It ignites and explodes, killing Hazel Pollock and her daughter Hazel Sanderson. 3 others are seriously injured. Tests conducted by the family's attorneys have recently found that the gas leaked from a faulty coupling located under the street in front of their home. Allegedly at fault, a fitting installed back in the 1960s known as a Normac coupling. The questions now are these. Is that fitting prone to failure, and should Atmos Energy have known about it? According to this trouble report made by Atmos's predecessor, Lone Star Gas, back in 1975, technicians did know about it. Several reports on file with the Texas Railroad Commission report trouble with the Normac-style coupling, mainly the elasticity being lost from the rubber gaskets holding the pipes together. This technician complains in another report that the rubber gaskets contract after being in service. The technician for Lone Star calls it a frequent occurrence on couplings that have been in service for a number of years. In the case of the Normac coupling that failed in front of the Pollocks' home, tests show not only had the rubber gasket worn out, the fitting itself was improperly manufactured.
This is where Mrs. Pollock was sitting.
The Pollocks' attorney, John Kearney, says Atmos continues to ignore the dangers that the Normac couplings pose.
Gosh, it's 30 years ago that we've known that these kinds of couplings are prone to failure, and still nobody wants to do anything to take them out of the ground and make people feel safe.
In a videotaped deposition just weeks ago, an Atmos operations manager testified the Normac couplings are known to leak.
On how many occasions have you seen situations in which the Normac couplings have been reported as leaking?
I don't know.
More than 10?
Yes.
More than 20?
I don't know.
Remaining requests for productions.
Meanwhile, inside a courtroom in Cleburne, the Pollocks' attorneys try to convince a judge to force Atmos to turn over more documents which could show that the gas company has known of a potential failure. Atmos attorneys argue that since they took over the gas company in 2004, there's no way they could have known of the decades-old problem.
I submit to you what Lone Star knew in the 1970s does not establish that Atmos knew about it on or prior to the date of this explosion.
Since News 8 first began investigating the potential for compression couplings to fail, state regulators have ordered them removed from the ground as soon as they are discovered.
When you can see the hole in the roof where the fireball came through.
John Kearney says that's not soon enough.
They're dangerous and they need to be taken out. And they need to be taken out of service now, not 10 years from now.
Atmos officials and their attorneys declined an on-camera interview and told us by email that they can't comment on the Cleburne case due to ongoing litigation. They did tell us, however, they are committed to the safety of their customers and that they always repair leaks in a timely manner and in full compliance with state and federal regulation.
We've been telling you about those dangerous couplings under tens of thousands of North Texas homes for months now. Tonight, state officials have cited Atmos Energy for violating safety standards in connection with a deadly house explosion in Cleburne last year. The violations are obtained in an accident investigation report just released by the Texas Railroad Commission. And Channel 8's Brett Shipp joins us tonight with details. Brett?
Gloria, the accident investigation into the deadly explosion in Cleburne took nearly 1 year to complete. Typically, these reports are released a few months after an accident, and the report does not specifically address what caused a coupling to fail and natural gas to leak and a house to explode and 2 people die. But what that report does say is this: Atmos violated safety standards after the explosion, and that could result in fines. Railroad Commission investigators have been in charge of determining what caused this house to explode and this mother and daughter to die in Cleburne, Texas last May. Their conclusion, according to the official report, that natural gas leaked into the house from an Atmos Energy coupling buried under the street in front of the home. A fact known to the Commission since a few hours after the explosion. So why the delay in the release of the report?
In terms of
Railroad Commission Chairman Michael Williams says it's because his safety director, Mary McDaniel, was waiting to inspect the failed fitting, an explanation offered during a commission meeting in February.
Did you not hear her say that she did not have access to the fitting, and so therefore cannot make a determination about the causation of that incident without having access to the fitting?
But nowhere in the Railroad Commission's final report is the failed fitting specifically discussed, nor could commissioners produce a copy of the fittings lab analysis. News 8, however, has obtained records which explore why the fitting failed and reveal a history of problems with that fitting. It's called the Normac compression coupling, and documents obtained by News 8 reflect that Atmos's predecessor, Lone Star Gas, knew about those problems back in the 70s. The Commission's report does cite Atmos for 2 safety violations. First, for damaging the coupling's rubber seal as it was being removed from the ground. Second, Atmos is cited for wrongly reporting to the state that there was no migration or traveling of gas from 2 other leaks found on the same line just a few yards away from the explosion. Atmos officials declined an on-camera interview, but in an email classified the damage to the coupling as only minor and blamed the misreporting of the leak as a discrepancy in record keeping. Overall, Atmos says the safety of our customers and employees is our highest priority.
If commissioners uphold the violations against Atmos, the penalty could be as much as $10,000 per day per violation. Atmos is already being hit hard financially by the commission's order to remove tens of thousands of dangerous compression couplings from the ground. And that could cost Atmos an estimated $40 million. That order came in the wake of our investigation into the couplings.
Are Texas Railroad Commissioners too cozy with the oil and gas industry operators they're supposed to be regulating? It's a question being raised in the wake of a News 8 investigation into deadly natural gas fittings. Some say commissioners should have forced gas companies to remove those fittings years ago. Reporter Brett Shipp joins us now with his continuing investigation. Brett?
Gloria, railroad commissioners are charged with writing and enforcing rules that govern the oil and gas industry. Yet all 3 commissioners rely heavily on contributions from industry officials to fund their campaigns and remain in power. Commissioners insist that money doesn't influence them when it comes to safety. Others are not so sure. Tonight, News 8 investigates.
I thought a tree had fallen on our roof. My son thought it was thunder.
The house already caved in on itself.
For most, it's a tragedy long forgotten. 3 elderly people killed in a house explosion in Garland in January of 2000. Investigators ruled that a small gas pipeline had cracked and leaked, causing the explosion that killed Albert and Lillian Holbert and her sister, Callie Hickerson. But the Holbert's daughter, Sidna Gordon, will never forget.
It is such an emotional roller coaster.
Still etched in her mind the moment she found out that the faulty pipe that killed her parents had a legacy of failure and death in Texas dating back to 1983. Only after her parents died did state railroad commissioners order the faulty pipe removed from the ground.
The Railroad Commission is the governmental agency in this state that has the responsibility for making sure we're all safe, and they don't do it.
That coupling right there is 2 pieces of steel held together by that coupling, and you can see what deteriorated shape that coupling's in.
West Texas rancher Jay Markham is a frequent critic of state railroad commissioners. His ranch land is crisscrossed by a corroded 80-year-old natural gas pipeline which sprang 6 leaks last year, polluting his soil and his wells.
You can tell by smelling it, it's got chemicals in it.
When he tries to get railroad commissioners to protect him and his land, he says they almost always side with the gas company, and he thinks he knows why.
As long as the Railroad Commission of Texas is funded and influenced by the oil and gas industry of the state of Texas, there will never be a change.
And what Markham refers to is this. According to Texans for Public Justice, all 3 commissioners' campaigns are heavily funded by the people they regulate. Of the $1.6 million raised by Victor Carrillo in 2004, 46% came from individuals connected to the oil and gas industry. Commissioner Elizabeth Ames Jones raised just over $2 million in 2006. Of that, 35% was oil and gas money. And a News 8 analysis of Commission Chairman Michael Williams' January campaign report shows of the $400,000 he's raised, 42% came from individuals with ties to the oil and gas industry. Critics say those percentages are hard to ignore.
With the Railroad Commission, we've got these people and nobody knows who they are, nobody knows what they do for a living, except the oil and gas industry that they're supposed to regulate, yet at the same time that's the very industry that's paying for their political careers.
It will conduct these investigations.
Chairman Williams says contributions do not buy his influence.
I reject that notion. I am very, very confident in the fact that I make decisions based upon facts and based upon good sound policy and based upon what I think is in the best interest of my fellow Texans.
Set of recommendations by all.
Commissioner Elizabeth Ames Jones told News 8, quote, "I've always called balls and strikes the way I see them, and I don't ever intend to stop doing that."
The mission's to put in place standards.
Commissioner Carrillo says, "My personal integrity dictates that the decisions I make are based on sound legal policy and scientific reasoning and not based on who has contributed to my campaign."
You would have thought a bomb had gone off.
All three commissioners reacted quickly to our investigation into faulty gas couplings that led to 2 deaths in Wiley in 2006 and 2 more in Cleburne last year.
And they didn't deserve it.
Just days after our reports aired,
All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Commissioners ordered the couplings removed from the ground. But in the cases of the faulty couplings and the cracked pipe which killed the Hulberts, past and present railroad commissioners had access to years of evidence that the potentially deadly problems were still in existence. And for years, no action was taken to force the removal of the potentially deadly products, a removal that would have cost industry officials millions of dollars. To this day, Gordon believes had railroad commissioners done their jobs, her parents would still be alive.
The Railroad Commission is only interested in protecting the gas companies, not the rest of us asleep in our beds.
Late last year, a state audit criticized Railroad Commission inspectors for being too cozy with and accepting small gifts from the oil and gas operators they were supposed to be regulating. Well, Railroad Commissioners have pledged to discontinue that practice. John and Gloria, it's the kind of thing that fuels this kind of criticism, and our investigation will continue.
Those natural gas compression couplings have been the focus of an ongoing News 8 investigation. According to reports just released by the state, they continue to be a threat to public safety. And now the federal government has issued a nationwide advisory warning of their potential failure. Channel 8's Brett Shipp joins us now with the details. Brett?
The federal advisory comes in the wake of our investigation into the failure of old natural gas fittings still in the ground and recently responsible for 4 deaths in North Texas. Now, new information that despite an aggressive plan to remove the failed fittings, they continue to leak and pose a threat. Atmos says the leaks are no cause for concern. Tonight, News 8 investigates. Our investigation uncovered how for decades natural gas compression couplings were popping loose under the ground in North Texas and of the deadly explosions that followed. As a result, the U.S. Department of Transportation has now issued this advisory to all gas distribution operators, identifying issues with mechanical couplings that could lead to failure. And according to figures just released by Atmos Energy, compression couplings under the North Texas soil continue to fail. Since January of last year, Atmos has experienced nearly 500 compression coupling leaks, and in 37 of those cases, the leaks involved full or partial separations of the pipe from its coupling.
I mean, it just blew up.
That's what happened in October of 2006 in Wiley, Texas, only this time involving a different style of coupling. This one attached to the gas meter in the alley. The service line popped out of its coupling and leaked gas into the home of Benny and Martha Cryer, who died when the gas leaked into their home and exploded. Following our investigation, state regulators ordered Atmos and all gas distribution companies in Texas to remove compression couplings attached to gas meters. Atmos is in the process of removing those couplings, more than 3,300 so far, and according to Atmos, only 4 showed signs of potential pullout. But there are still tens of thousands of the potentially faulty couplings under the North Texas soil. Atmos crews are replacing about 100 gas meter couplings a day in North Texas, and that number is expected to triple in the coming months. The expected cost to Atmos, around $50 million. And please, y'all, do not act surprised if that $50 million shows up in our bills in the coming months. That's subject to the Railroad Commission approval, however.